and gentlemen, boys and girls, welcome to the Bradbury Group, New Zealand's best weekly political argument, hosted by the militant, Marxist, anti-Santa, Martyn Bradbury. The Bradbury Group is streamed live on Rover, Sky TV, YouTube and Facebook. Proudly sponsored by Aotearoa, journalism you can trust. Let the arguments begin.
Kia ora Aotearoa. The true demarcation of power in a late-stage capitalism, liberal, progressive democracy is the 1% richest plus their 9% enablers versus the 90% rest of us. And once you see politics through that lens, the left can never lose another election ever again. Welcome to the Bradbury Group, New Zealand's best weekly political argument. I'm your host, the editor of the daily blog, Martyn Bradbury. Bomber to my comrades, Mr. Bradbury if you're nasty. My pronouns are us and we. Coming up on this evening's show, the political panel all-stars tonight are New Zealand Herald columnist Simon Wilson, Green Party MP Teanau Tuiono, and the new leader of the Opportunities Party, the mighty Qiulae Wong. Tonight's one-on-one in 10 is co-leader of the Māori Party, DebbieNgarewa-Packer. Shout out to Kiwi Skirt and Chewy from BHN moderating tonight's YouTube. Good evening to all the Bradburyistas online watching right now. Your comments will appear on screen as we go. Shout out to our Wātea Facebook, Rover, Spotify, Apple Podcasts and Sky TV whānau. And our Twitter panel tonight is Tim Selwyn. He'll be tweeting live online at Twitter, hashtag the Bradbury Group. Before all that, however, is this week's War on News. Brothers and sisters, shock and horror this week as two old white male councillors at the Whangamata Community Board had to flee their meeting because a karakia was spoken at the opening. The ears of white older men are so brittle and fragile that they must rush from any room where a karakia is spoken just in case the mere mention of one word in Māori will be so damaging to their brain that it could trigger strokes, brain cancer, or testicular swelling. The translation of the karakia that forced these two councillors to run from their meetings is, come forth from above, come forth from below, come forth from within, come forth from the environment, vitality and well-being for all, strengthened in unity. Clearly horrific, terrifying words for any older white male to be forced to endure. Now, some cruel people want to viciously mock these easily triggered snowflakes who had to leave the room in case their poor precious souls are forced to hear one single word of te reo. But honky-ear is a serious medical condition, and we should all feel sympathy for old white men being forced to hear the indigenous mother tongue of the land they live in. Thoughts and prayers for the Whangamata Community Board in their fight against honky-ear. Talking of crazy honkies, this is a real headline from this week. This is a real headline. I did not make this up. Jeffrey Epstein's brother says Bubba isn't Bill Clinton after Epstein email about Trump blowing Bubba goes viral. Comrades, of all the headlines I thought I'd be reading out this year, one from Jeffrey Epstein's brother clarifying that Putin doesn't have incriminating intimate photos of Donald Trump and Bill Clinton being sexual together wasn't one of them. How far from the norms have we gotten with Donald Trump that this is an actual headline? The funniest bit about what has been released in the Epstein files is not Epstein bitching about Trump. It is how much it seems to point directly to Epstein being an intelligence asset for Mossad and the CIA. Here are the headlines you're not hearing. Jeffrey Epstein helped broker Israeli security agreement with Mongolia. Jeffrey Epstein and Mossad, how the sex trafficker helped Israel build a back channel to Russia amid Syrian civil war. And the most recent report entitled, Israeli spy stayed for weeks at a time with Jeffrey Epstein in Manhattan. Look, I have no idea how Jeffrey died or how deep his weird ties were with Donald Trump, but could I suggest that his penchant for filming powerful men in compromising positions with underage women wasn't recreational and may have in fact been professional? Now, if I suddenly die after saying that, don't trust the autopsy report. And finally, in this week's War on News, Iceland last week declared a state of emergency as latest research warns of a shutting down of the Atlantic meridional overturning circulation, an ocean current that is crucial to the climate stability impacting billions of people. To date, the idea that the AMOC could shut down has been a thing of fiction. However, as more fresh water from glaciers flood the sea in crucial oceanic pump points, the desalination weakens the heat transfer, meaning most of Western Europe will be plunged into freezing weather that could trigger a new ice age. Turns out bringing your own bag to the supermarket wasn't enough to save us. Brothers and sisters, we're all going to die on a burning planet thanks to the lies of the petro-industrial complex and their polluter mates. To quote the great warrior poet oracle Mike Hosking, happy days. The political panel all-stars up shortly, whānau, but first, this week's 1-on-1 in 10 with co-leader of the Māori Party, DebbieNgarewa-Packer. Kia ora, comrade. Welcome to the show, and thank you for being available to the Fourth Estate. Your democracy is grateful. Debbie, it has been a hellish few months for you, comrade. I have been commenting on politics in this country for 30 years, and I thought that you and Rawiri's extraordinary leadership deserved loyalty and support, not plotting and leadership coups. How are you emotionally holding up from all of this, and what do you wish people understood about what's happening inside Te Pāti Māori right now? Yes. Yes.
We don't want our supporters getting caught up in our voters, our electorates getting caught up in running each other down.
Yes.
I think that, the enemy is out there and it has been poking and delighting in everything that's going on. What we need to do is take control of our destiny and do what we were set out here to do. And that's been a lot of what the last 6 to 8 weeks has been. And again, how are we feeling? We're feeling ready for 2026. Obviously, we're deeply saddened by how things have gone, but we also are really asking that our supporters don't jump on the bandwagon, don't lash out, don't add to what has already been a highly fueled matter that everyone seems to have a story about.
Amen. I want to briefly talk about your president, John Tamihere, because he's getting a lot of blame online, which I think is very unfair because I'm not sure how else he was supposed to respond to an attempted leadership challenge against you and Rawiri. The CIA always describes Saddam Hussein as a son of a bitch, but he's our son of a bitch. Now I think fondly of JT. He is one of the best political strategists in the game and has been an architect of Te Pāti Māori's success. Should JT stay on or be removed, as some have called for?
Oh, look, I think first and foremost, what we've got to focus on is what 2026 requires us to do. It requires us to be having the experience of someone that's been in cabinet. It requires us to be extremely disciplined and make sure that we continue to maintain what we have in the last 2 years, which is an average of around about 4% in the polls. And, we saw Tamaki Makaurau results. We've seen what we've had to, what we've achieved. And, that's all been achieved by the fact that we've had the best political strategists. And I'm not buying into, and I'm not going to be dragged down into who likes who doesn't like who. We are in the game of politics.
Yes.
And at the moment, it's about doing everything we can to get this revolting government out because God forbid if our people have this crowd for another 3 years.
Oh,
and that has to be our absolute focus. And we have to really stay mindful of what it is that our people have said to us. I've said to us in 2023 when this crowd got in. They've said to us through the Treaty Principles Bill, through the Hikoi, through the RSB, through everything, through MACA, through Fast Track, everything they've said is we cannot deal with this crowd again. So for us, the real flex in leadership is being able to work with the best team that has shown the results. And that's how we got here. That's how we got from 1 to 2 to 6 to a by-election with the resourcing that we had in a short amount of time. So that's what I prefer they focus on.
I think the Māori Party reset is one of the most important events of the political year because it is your party saying you are evolving from being a party of opposition activists into a credible and stable partner in any change of government. Poll after poll after poll is telling us 51% requires Labour plus Greens plus Māori Party. Can you still meet that promise after the expulsion of 2 of your MPs?
It's absolutely our focus. And the reset was about powering up. And it was about strengthening our movement. At the moment, the reason that we're needed in there is that we have a leadership that believes that capital gains tax is enough to be able to get this country ahead and to deal with the poverty. We actually need to have a wealth tax. So there are aspects to our policy thinking that are probably more aligned with the Greens that actually need to be in place to move Labour more towards the left and to move Labour to dealing with what you said at the beginning, which is the hyper-rich, the superpower, the corporate exploitation that our nation is dealing with. And sitting in the middle and being half-hearted about it isn't going to do it. And so that is exactly why we're needed. We are needed to be able to tax people that are making and gaining from all the system at the moment, not once they sell assets and things. So we're very clear on why we're needed, and we're very clear on having to deal with pay equity, having to deal with health inequities, having to deal with all the things that this government shamelessly inflicting on our communities, prisoning their way through justice. So that has to be what the reset is. And you're dead right. We had to move from this mentality of being guerrilla warfare into preparing and straightening up as credible coalition partners. And that in itself is a real tough exercise for a young party to confront. But we know we're better off being inside than outside at the moment.
The Ipsos poll is telling us that Kiwis have turned their back on this government's terrible agenda and damaging social policies. When will we see new Māori Party policy that tackles those problems?
There's actually good Māori Party policy or Te Pāti Māori policy out at the moment.
Oh, there is? No. You've got some of the best. You do have some of the best. But will you have new policy?
Our tax policy is... our tax policy is really strong.
Yes.
Our whānau ora policy is really strong.
Yes.
Our standing up our own hauora rautaki is really strong.
Yep.
So what we wanted to do was to be in a position to straighten up our waka in preparation for 2026. When you see every other political party having its leadership issues next year, we will be able to then focus on what our policy point of difference is.
Yes.
And I know it's really difficult to get that airtime because we took on the right-wing media and and have worn it as a consequence. But we'll be working really hard. We'll be working really hard to maintain the confidence and to go out and push what our policy solutions are, and the ones that are, like I said, that are going to be able to bring in money from taxing the super rich and giving out to those who are struggling and working their guts off, that are lining up to leave here to go across the Tasman.
Right.
And to be able to give equality to everyone. Everyone deserves it. So,
right.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to having those conversations. And you say to me, Debbie, I like this policy, but I'm really worried about this one. I think that's the conversations we're looking forward to having once everything settles down.
ACT passed the Regulatory Standards Bill that will see corporations given a board inside government to vet all legislation to ensure it doesn't encroach upon their profit margins. Why should property rights trump human rights in New Zealand's Parliament?
Well, why should property rights also trump te tiriti rights and obligations? I mean, this is a bill that forces all laws to comply with this narrow economic regulatory principles, obviously created by David and his Atlas mates. And I mean, it gives courts more powers to strike down and undermine all social and environmental Māori legislation. So it's again, it's the whole agenda that the tail that wags this national dog has allowed to come through, where it's destabilising everything that addresses treaty rights and maximising or optimising everything that creates further exploitation and corporate exploitation. And this is, I guess, the real sense of urgency is that we are. I don't even know what Luxon is. I mean, what is he? What's his portfolio? You know, does anyone know what the Prime Minister has as a portfolio? What we do know is what David Seymour has. What we do know is what Shane Jones has. What we do know is what Winston Peters has. So we cannot let these minor parties completely destroy alongside this, you know, bloody. I shouldn't say this, but it is an impotent blinking national party that has allowed them to run our country into something that's unrecognisable. It's just absolutely unrecognisable.
Chippy has ruled out a wealth tax and says he won't allow one to be negotiated. But if the Greens and Māori Party unify post-election to negotiate as a united front for the same wealth tax Grant Robertson and David Parker pitched, then we could get some real economic transformation. Would Te Pāti Māori look to negotiate with the Greens as a united front post-election to ensure New Zealand First are locked out of any future Labour-led government?
Absolutely. I mean, could you see us doing something with New Zealand First? Well, who are, every second word that comes out of that side of the house is mining, Deborah, mining. It's just like, bro, settle down. You know, what we have to do is, some of the things are going to be really easy to undo, such as banning seabed mining, repealing stuff. I think we all have common agreement on those.
Yes.
The wealth tax, we have common agreement. And the reality is that Labor doesn't get to sit there and protect who have wealth, because it's actually the workers that are, and I guess this is the thing that I sort of try and get my head around. Why? The people that Chippy is targeting are the soft belly who are part National, part Labour. We have to be really clear. The people who are hurting are who Labour aren't talking to. The people who are hurting are who Te Pāti Māori and the Greens have got in their sights. And we actually have to do transformation. That was the key word. We cannot allow this country to sort of sit with soft bellies. We actually have to have leadership that is prepared to turn around this country's the way that it's gone down. Otherwise, we're going to become a land of the elite. And I think that's the saddest part, is that every day I'm sitting down with people who are working their guts out, 2 to 3 jobs, and they can't cope here. So we have to make sure that we are impacting on the richest, that we are stopping the growth of their wealth, and their wealth is tax-free. And it's time for the richest to pay, so that our whānau and our communities don't have to shoulder the burden.
This government,
that's the difference between wealth taxes.
This government certainly has turned Aotearoa into the land of the wrong white crowd. Finally, Debbie, there's so much social carnage and damage occurring within society right now. Our deplorable suicide rates, 500 kids in state care abused last year, 5.3% unemployment, which is 10.5% for Māori, while 72,000 flee to Australia. Is fighting for a Labour plus Green plus Te Pāti Māori government next year worth it?
Absolutely. I mean, one of those kids flighting is mine. And, I can see why. We can't retain nurses. We're not paying teachers. It has to be the absolute focus for all of us. And those that aren't focused on that politically are happy with status quo. It has to be. I have never seen so many unions strike as I have every day of Parliament. There's a strike of some sort. These are a protest, I beg your pardon, of some sort. And, it has to be, because our elderly deserve to have a good quality of life. Our young deserve to be able to work. And the solutions are there. The regional solutions, I actually just put here today, the regional solutions, the economic solutions, the ability to do things are there. What we're doing is allowing the government to continuously build up things, and the profits go offshore. The seabed mining profits go offshore.
Yeah.
So we absolutely have to invest in our nationhood. And we know that 2026 is a do or die. We really know it. If our people cannot afford to have this government in charge of our health system, our education system, our justice system at all. They need to get. And the sooner that we can all go through the pains and the settling up and setting, resetting and evolving pains, the better that we can be prepared to take on the battle of our lives next year. And that's what it's going to be. They are going to pull out every budget that they can, every donor that they can, every sponsor that they can, to take us on one by one. You see the behaviour in the House now. So there's nothing else that's our focus, nothing else.
Thank you, comrade. We'll talk to you again soon. Kia ora.
Anytime.
Okay, now to our political panel all-stars. Our first panellist is the only reason you would buy a subscription to the New Zealand Herald. He's a cross between House of Hufflepuff and Obi-Wan Kenobi. Militant, cyclist and Auckland Vision and New Zealand Herald columnist Simon Wilson. Kia ora, comrade. Welcome to the show. One word to describe the week, please, sir.
Kia ora, Bomber. My one word is $4.5 trillion. Is that a word? I mention this because it's the COP conference in Brazil at the moment, COP 30. Some people might remember that the Rio Earth Summit started all this in 1992, and then 3 years later the COP process started every year. $4.5 trillion is the value of the richest 100 people in the world. That's what they have. Elon Musk must have, what, a quarter of it?
Yeah, outrageous, isn't it?
So those people have the ability to actually, if not solve, then certainly seriously make a dent in the climate crisis. They have the ability to fund the transition to a low emissions global economy if they want to do it.
Yeah.
Bill Gates, who is one of them, has just come out and said, I don't really
think
that climate change is going to be winnable, so we should maybe focus on poverty and fixing diseases that can be fixed instead. The reality is you cannot address poverty in a meaningful way. You cannot address illness and disease in a meaningful way while the world is burning. The people who are most affected by the current, whatever the oppressions are, will be most affected by climate change as well. If you turn your back on fighting climate change, you are in effect turning your back on everything.
Preach.
Gates ought to know that.
Our next panellist is the brand spanking new leader of the Opportunities Party. She's a cross between House of Ravenclaw and James Bond's Research and Development Division of the British Secret Service. Making her debut on the Bradbury Group tonight, Qiulae Wong. Kia ora.
Kia ora.
Welcome.
Great
One word to describe the week, please, ma'am.
Well, I'm going to take it. It's opportunity.
She's good. She's good.
Remember the name. And it is New Zealand's time to seize this opportunity, because we've got challenges coming out of our ears: climate change, superannuation, infrastructure. There are no bold, ambitious solutions on the table from any of the parties, and we are painting a vision for New Zealand that is all about seizing that opportunity.
Amen. And last but certainly not least, he's a high-ranking Green Party MP and recreational Jedi, the spokesperson Defence and Disarmament, Foreign Affairs, National Security and Intelligence, Oceans and Fisheries, Pacific People, Space, Veterans and Workplace Relations and Safety. He's a left-wing Harry Potter with a lightsaber. Teanau Tuiono. Kia ora, comrade.
Kia ora, everybody. Good to be here as well. Let me start by saying your timing is impeccable, because actually the House is in urgency. Judith Collins is talking, and I'm going to have to run down, do a speech, and then run back.
Wow, that is amazing.
So sorry about that, but you are seeing an MP actually literally in action here as well. We've got the Defence Workforce Bill that's going through, which is a strike-breaking bill.
Yes.
Which is really to bring those civilian workers in there as well. And the House just sped up, so I was expecting to have a
bounce
bit more
backwards
time
and
on my
forwards
hands.
if we can get you. How's that?
Yeah.
Brothers and sisters, let's get into tonight's show. Issue 1, Ipsos polling plus 4.7% food inflation equals one-term government. Issue 2, the McSkimming scandal. Is it time for real police oversight? Issue 3, Green Party strikes back on fast-track projects, and Winston sounds nervous. And Issue 4 tonight, is the Regulatory Standards Bill the worst piece of legislation ever passed? Plus, we'll have a final word at the end of the show where each panellist gets to go to the mountaintop to see who breaches broadcasting standards this week. My money's on Qiulae. Comrades, let's get into tonight. right, show with issue one, and that is the Ipsos poll looking at the biggest issues confronting Kiwis and which political party is best to solve them. Labour is now the most trusted party to respond to 8 of the 10 most important issues to voters. Simon, Kiwis don't care about starting race wars against Māori. They're not interested in bashing beneficiaries. They don't want more mining, and they don't care about hating trans people, which is tragic for the government because that's pretty much all they've got. Has this government lost sight of what matters for Kiwis to indulge in culture war bullshit?
I think that's absolutely true. And it is reassuring to learn that culture war bullshit, as you put it, doesn't have much traction in this country.
Right?
I think we knew that because it's never really powered a party into power.
No.
The parties that are constantly raising it are
all sub 5%. That's right.
Well, they're not sub 5%, but two of them are in government. But they are minor parties, and the people who are in the National Party, who also raise culture war issues, have not really managed to change the mainstream, if you like, of the National Party as well. However, because they don't have anything else, there's a great big hole there. It's not a surprise to hear these Ipsos numbers. I don't quite go so far, though, as to think it means that there's necessarily going to be a change of government. I mean, I think it's absolutely on the cards, but I think these polling questions that are around the question of who will you vote for don't always point to who will you really vote for.
Right. Follow-up question. The minimum wage increased 1.5% this year, and Stats New Zealand showed last week that food inflation was up 4.7%, fruit up 11%, beef up 17.4%, lamb up 32.2%, bread up 11.4%, cheese up 14.8%, eggs up 16.2%, electricity up 11.8%. This government was elected making promises to lower the cost of living. How's that working out?
Well, those items that you just mentioned, they are in everybody's budget, aren't
right?
They? I mean, unless you're a vegetarian and take out the meat, they are the staples. They are the things everybody has to pay for. So the rate of inflation is based on a whole lot of other factors that many people don't have to pay for, but the core issue of what you have to pay at the supermarket and the bills you have to pay to keep your house going, they are everybody's, and so therefore there is a real gap between inflation and how the minimum wage and therefore the wage structure of the country are tracking.
Just checking with the studio. We got Teanau in the room, guys?
Yeah, I'm still here, man.
Oh, throw him out. Right, we'll throw to him.
Oh, you're doing two things at once. I think that's
Teanau, Kiwis ranked their top 5 concerns as cost of living, healthcare, the economy, housing, and coming in at 5th equal law and order, unemployment, and poverty. As all this government are offering as solutions to those major concerns are allowing overseas millionaires to buy $5 million mansions, asset sales, welfare sanctions, and military boot camps. Why have the voters turned on them?
Well, I mean, you've got the tail wagging the National Party dog. We've been saying that for a while as well. All this distraction politics around culture wars imported in from the US. They're trying to do Trump-style politics, and people are just not having it. What people want is actually being able to keep the lights on, put food on the table. These are the issues that we actually need to be focusing on. I think that's what people want, and so making sure that you have a fair distribution of wealth and making sure that you've got a progressive tax system to make sure that everybody can do that is actually what's important. Instead, you're getting tax cuts for tobacco companies, handouts for mining companies, handouts for multi-rich landlords and all that kind of carry on. Actually, we need to do the basics, need to do that well. This government doesn't focus on that. They're just, the Prime Minister's just too distracted. He's just trying to keep his two friends happy and actually drop the ball completely. And so that's why we need to make this government a one-term government. We've got all these appalling bills coming through under urgency. I think there's a whole list of bills that are coming through right now, and I'm going to have to run down and talk to one pretty soon.
Follow-up question. Follow-up question. The survey highlighted a new low in public perception of the government's performance, with the rating falling to 3.9 out of 10, the lowest since tracking began in 2018. Has National misunderstood the real impacts of their austerity budget?
Well, the biggest losers with this government is National Party voters, I tell you that. They thought they were voting for the National Party and actually they were voting for the ACT Party.
Right.
The ACT Party is actually running this government. Winston Peters, when he's awake, is running it as well. And so, I mean, I'm not surprised by those numbers, to be honest. We see it in here every day. We're fighting these bills every day, and they're just not good. And that's why we need to focus on making sure that we can do everything to look after our people, look after the planet as well. Look after the environment. We are the Greens. And I've got to run, man, but I'll be back as soon as I can.
Okay, we'll get you on the way back. Qiulae, the two old main parties used to get 80% of the vote. They are now lucky to get 60%. There is a disillusionment in New Zealand politics. What new ideas are the Opportunities Party bringing to the table?
Yeah, I mean, I think radical centrism is something that we've always been proud to call ourselves, and others call us as well. There is a real tension where, everyone is getting pulled to the extremes at the moment.
Yes.
And we actually think we've got solutions. You know, our tax reset policy, we think that there'll be stuff on it that those on the right really like efficiency, the sort of simplicity, getting rid of the red tape and the administrative burden.
Which is a big thing for them, and sometimes happens, right? And if you can cut that red tape out, awesome. All the way better,
save us all some money.
Sure.
But then, there's stuff that those on the left are going to really love too, like actually putting a decent amount of money back into people's pockets with all those cost of living pressures you explained.
Yeah.
Those people that are on kind of a low income renting, they will be the ones that will benefit most from our tax package, because we are about bringing house prices down through the land value tax and putting money back in their pocket with the citizens' income. And then the flip side of that is that we might encourage those that own a bunch of property to actually grow their wealth in other ways. And I suppose that's where we differ from the Greens and Te Pāti Māori. We wouldn't advocate for a wealth tax because we don't want to send the signal that growing wealth necessarily is bad, but you can do it in different ways. My KiwiSaver fund grew by more than my house did last year. Right. Makes me think maybe I should put my savings into that instead.
Sure.
And we want to encourage that kind of behaviour.
Can you explain TOP's land tax policy? Because it's very different from everybody else's. Why have you gone down this pathway? I did have an opportunity to talk to some of your previous party's wonks, and they're very smart people, they're very clever on this land tax. And I just wanted you to have a bit of an explanation. What is it and how would it work?
Yeah. So it's an small annual tax. The actual percentage and all the figures are going to come out next year, but it is a very, very low percentage that you pay annually, a bit like rates. And we can
you own land. If you own land. Right.
And only on the land, so not on any improvement buildings.
And what's the value based on? Is it
the same valuation methods that we already use?
Okay.
So we've got a mechanism. It's a proven mechanism that people trust for the valuation of property, and it would be based on that. For those like retirees or farmers, there would be options for deferral, and fair exemptions. And we want to bring in a gradual transition plan because we appreciate that this is a big change for Kiwis. We have spent, decades seeing property as the vehicle to invest for our future, and we have to, manage that carefully and minimise the negative impact as much as possible.
Māori land that has multi-owners, how is it going to work with that?
That will be part of the exemptions and things that will come through early next year.
Yep. And how much do you expect to raise from it?
So that is part of a full tax package which offsets the citizen's income. So the citizen's income is a payment which is made to almost all adults. It's not quite universal. So if you're really at the top end of the income scale, you're not going to get it.
Right.
But,
if you're
9 out of 10. Well, I don't know if it's 9 out of 10. But if you're middle income, you'll still get it, and it will probably offset what you're going to pay back in land value if you own a property.
Right.
If you don't own property, then you're going to have a bit more money in your back pocket.
So, and you'd have that guaranteed income each year. You'd know how much you're getting.
Yeah. And I think what's really important about that is, you just look back at the last couple of years, the tens of thousands of people that have been made redundant, and if they didn't have a rainy day fund, they're they're really battling. They either have to take a job that they don't really want to do, that's demoralising, is not helping them move forward in a dignified way,
or they have to go to welfare, and exactly the same thing happens.
Exactly.
Not moving in a dignified way.
Yeah.
Can I ask what the advantage of a land tax is over a wealth tax or a capital gains?
Well, I think compared to capital gains, the capital gains tax doesn't really incentivise people to sell property that they're sitting on, because actually it does the opposite if they don't want to pay the tax. So they'll hold on to it.
This is aimed at people who land banking,
like
right?
Unnecessarily large property.
So it's similar to a wealth tax in that way.
Yeah, but we're just saying, why don't you go put that money into some startups or in a fund that's investing in New Zealand infrastructure, or all these things that could actually still make you a decent return on your money every year and be of value to all Kiwis and help us kind of grow the innovation and the prosperity for everyone in this country.
Quick round to all of you. What is the percentage chance that there will be a National Party leadership spill over the summer? Simon, percentage chance.
If the polls continue to fall for National, very high.
Oh, over 50?
If the polls continue to fall, if they start trolling around the mid to even high mid-20s, if they get stuck there, and things like the Ipsos poll continue to show they're in trouble, I think they'll be rethinking. Yes.
Qiulae?
I mean, I'm much less politically experienced than you guys. I don't know. I think they're going to back him. I think.
Really?
Yeah. I mean,
this is going to go.
If,
right.
if it's going to keep going down as well, do you want to take on that position? That's a bit
poison chalice.
Yeah.
You haven't. Have you heard the ego of politicians? I am the one who can save this party.
Do we have Teanau? Is he back? He is. Throw him on if we could. Comrade. Percentage chance of a spill for National over summer. He's looking very frozen there.
Yes, he is.
He's gone. Okay, we'll move on. Comrades, we need to move on to issue 2 tonight, and that is the bewildering horror of the Jevon McSkimming's police scandal, where senior police officers covered for and protected a mate from scrutiny who turned out to be using his police phone and laptop to watch bestiality and child abuse porn. That the young woman complaining faced prosecution is as jaw-dropping as it is offensive. Qiulae, we now have very sophisticated organised crime who seek out high-ranking police, detectives and judges for dirt like this to blackmail them with. Isn't it time we had a real anti-corruption body in New Zealand? And how damaging do you think this has been to the police reputation?
Yeah, I think I mean, we're all appalled and disgusted at what's been coming out. I think it's a real shame that it's eroding trust even more, not just in the police, but in all political institutions at a time when we actually need to be building that up. I think it adds to that, which is really a shame. And I would just love for us to be doing more to make democracy and all of our political institutions something that we can have faith in again.
Simon, one thing that leapt out to me early on in this terrible scandal was McSkimming's telling a work colleague that he had to watch bestiality and child abuse porn because it was the only thing that made him feel. Which is about as dark a red flag as you're going to get. The outgoing Police Association President, Chris Cahill, warned that police mental health was an invisible crisis that urgently needed addressing. While no one is going to ever defend McSkimming's, isn't there a truth here that police officers who see many terrible damaged things do urgently require mental health services that can help with the trauma of what they are forced to witness because of the nature of the job?
I think you're right about that. It is one of the disturbing things about the way in which the Minister of Police and the Commissioner of Police, Chambers and Mitchell, the other way around, have responded to this crisis by essentially trying to walk a line that says they were bad apples, they were wrong, we're horrified, cannot happen. And on the other hand, trying to say, but please don't think that it reflects badly on the police. It's a very difficult line for them to tread.
Right.
And the reason it's difficult for them to tread is that when you get someone doing what McSkimming was doing, it very often is going to be because they thought they could get away with it, because they thought they lived in and worked in a culture which tolerated that kind of behaviour.
We wouldn't have known about his porn abuse if they hadn't done the bloody
exactly.
search,
And
right?
even if he didn't think they tolerated bestiality, by talking about it to a colleague, he clearly thought it wasn't going to be a biggie. But he also thought, I work in a place where I will be looked after by my bosses, by my mates, by the people around me. And actually, that's not an uncommon thing at an executive level. It's not an uncommon thing at other parts of companies generally.
Yeah.
People do look after their mates. People do condone. People do support. And a part of that is good, but a big part of it is also not good, because it means when you get bad behaviour, it gets reinforced and supported and hidden and all the rest. So to go to your question about mental health, that's, the idea that the misogyny that McSkimming was involved in and the terrible way in which the woman became the victim, and you said before, faced prosecution. They didn't withdraw the charges.
I know. They were going to actually...
It's absolutely astonishing that didn't get hosed down quickly. So that problem, the problem of the culture of we think we just support our own and we're going to close ranks, and then the question of, as you say, this is a high-stress work environment that this incident suggests has not got good mental health practices in place to look after people. And if you add in the macho culture of, I'm okay, I'm tough enough, I'm a police officer, of course I'm tough enough, it becomes harder to deal with it, but that doesn't mean they shouldn't know about that and have strategies for it.
We don't have Teanau, he's not back? Bugger. Here's the question I was going to put to him, I'll throw it open to both of you. Earlier this year, Green MP Tamitha Paul was ripped to shreds for daring to suggest some people in the community don't trust the police. Now, they went to town on her for daring to suggest that the police aren't the greatest bunch of blokes in the Southern Hemisphere, and that she was almost bordering on witchcraft. Well, those voices are very quiet now, aren't they?
Yeah, I think, I think it's... not all police are bad.
Of course not. No one's saying that. No one's saying that.
Exactly.
Not all police. Yeah. But it's a culture that hasn't got any oversight.
Yeah, and I think that's where it kind of, when it does, like with the Tamitha example, it does kind of get blown into this extreme, almost culture war type thing. And that's not helpful for the New Zealand public. And back to kind of my point around trust in institutions. You've got a whole lot of people saying don't trust the police, and a lot of people that potentially are covering up corruption. It's confusing. You get whiplash.
Right.
Why can't we just have sensible conversations about this?
What Tamitha Paul told us was clearly known to an awful lot of New Zealanders, and you could say that we fall into one of two camps. We are people who have always regarded the police as being there for us, and we are people who have been treated badly by the police. Yeah. And it might be because I was a drunken hoom and I was 15 and they pushed me around, or it might be more serious. But if you've had bad experiences with the police, or someone in your whānau has had bad experiences, you're going to be wary of them.
Right.
And it was astonishing that so many MPs and others in authority
went to town on
did
it,
not understand that.
Yeah, it was weird. Yeah. It was like, really? Come on. Comrades, we need to move on to issue 3 tonight. And as the Greens have pledged to revoke fast-track consents for coal, hard rock gold and seabed mining projects, which has Matua Winston hopping mad. Qiulae, don't voters hate parties simply coming into power and reversing everything the previous government did? Could this hurt the Greens? They're walking in going, we're going to burn all of this to the shoreline. Voters don't like that.
Yeah, and we're hearing it across the board. I mean, I think Labour recently also came out on the regulatory standards bill and said they would immediately repeal. And, it's not saying that we agree with, we submitted against that bill. We don't agree with, some of those licenses that are being given. But the solution to bad process isn't just more bad process. So we need to find a way to break through this, because they might repeal it all, and then it's not, National's going to be back in government one day. They're just going to put it all back again. So we have to find a way to move forward on these things. Our stuff around citizens' assemblies and increasing engagement in politics.
More democracy,
More
right?
democracy.
You think more actual sitting down around the table and working it out is going to get a better result than just, hey, I've got 51%, screw you.
Totally. And getting everyday citizens involved more than just every 3 years to vote.
Yes.
Because it works in lots of places around the world. You know, they get an opportunity to vote on things 4 times a year in Switzerland, for example.
Yes.
So, you know, let's do a bit more of that on the issues that matter to us.
Simon, this government gave gas and oil $200 million in subsidies and rewrote the law to sidetrack any environmental challenges to coax miners and resource extractors back. Is the threat that the Greens are making here democracy and progress, or a Luddite handbrake to a prosperous mining future? I'm saying that with a straight face.
Yeah, you are. And just before I answer you, I wonder if I could just pick up on something that Qiulae has just said. Citizens' assemblies, I'm at the moment sitting in on a deliberative democracy process, which is a very similar thing. They don't get to make the rules, but they get to hear the issues. A randomly selected group of citizens who are representative of their community. And it's happening in a local board area in Auckland over a hot issue in the area. And it's fascinating to... I've sat through the first session. There'll be 3 all-day sessions, and I've observed the first, and I'll write about it when it's all finished. But the thing that was so striking was these people, 40 people who were chosen as demographic representatives of their communities. They were young and old and different ethnicities and relatively different ranges of wealth and so on. Almost none of them were the people we hear from all the time. You know, the people who write to the papers, the people who go to public meetings and shout angrily at things, all of that stuff.
So just ordinary folk, ordinary Kiwis
are not the people who dominate the political discourse.
The loud minority.
And I know that includes people like me because I'm a professional political commentator. Sure. But those people are different. And they are ordinary people.
And how are you finding their deliberative process? Is it eye-opening? Does it give you hope?
As I say, a third of the way through, and a lot of it was introductory stuff. So I am hopeful, but I'm still waiting to see how it unfolds, because a lot of the stuff that was in their heads was, you know, they were asking about questions that media had been obsessing about, but they weren't asking the way the normal people in the media would be asking. Right. So there's kind of a process of cleaning out the ideas of that have been dominating the debate and getting it back to what's this really about? You know, how will people really be affected? And so on. Anyway, having said that, back to the question of the Greens saying a green government, or that's how they put it, isn't it? A green government would negate any contract signed under this fast-track legislation in those particular areas.
Matua Winston's very angry.
He sure is, and Matua Shane is too.
Oh, they're both very hopping mad.
And
moronic.
Of course it plays to them, doesn't it? You know, they love being angry about that because it just racks their own people up. I think you're right that it is difficult if we keep having a flip-flop every time there's a change of government, because I expect we'll probably have several changes of government in the next 20 years, say. It is difficult, but at the same time, every party has to have a line. Every party has to be able to say, you have gone too far here. You have destroyed the thing that we think is important to our progress. And mining is going to be one of those things for the Greens. So it's up to them to make it good and make it true, and to show that instead of the mining option, there are other economic and environmental and social options that will work better, and to make that work.
There's an interesting double standard here, isn't there? When the left are in power, we bend over bloody backwards to have the great big hooey, and everyone comes in and we all have a talk and we try and work things out, and we bring over the other side and we say, well, you know, what compromise can we... And you saw Labour do this on a whole bunch of environmental, and Federated Farmers came along and agreed to the emission, and they go, agree. Then these buggers get it. They do not give two shits about sitting down with other people and hearing your ideas. They go, here's the agenda, here's what we're doing, screw you. And we have to always do the, let's have the huddle and everyone's... And we've got to... Building something is far easier than breaking it, isn't it?
There is a very good example of that playing out in Auckland right now, and ironically it's about housing density, which traditionally has been more of a left-wing issue, but the Minister of Housing and Transport, Chris Bishop, has spearheaded the proposal to allow much more dense housing to be built along railway lines and on arterial roads and near busways as well.
Basic good sense.
Yeah, which everybody says in theory they agree with, but
until
actually...
it's down their road, right?
That's right, yeah. In essence, that controversy, which is a real storm for a relatively small number of people, is happening and getting a lot of media attention and all the rest. In essence, that controversy is the one that, in my view, Jacinda Ardern tried to avoid by supporting the idea of an underground light rail system through the same part of Auckland. Putting it underground, I think she thought would mean we can avoid this fight with people who don't want to have tower blocks or don't want to have too much disruption on their street. And of course that backfired on her terribly because they were not able to get that going, and it was such a daft idea, it was so expensive that it was easy for the National people to knock it over. But National have now got that fight.
Qiulae, does this show why we need a 4-year term?
Yeah, I mean, I think that a bit more time would be good for governments to really make
implement
an impact.
Policy and get some actual runs on the board, right?
Yeah, I think so. And I mean, I think going back to how we would solve, I suppose, if I'm putting myself in those shoes.
Do it.
You know, we don't want to be holding kind of grand hooies every week either. You know, Citizens Assembly is one of the criticisms that, you know, some people throw at us is, this is just more consultation. And I think that the counter to that is that, you know, we also want to spend taxpayer dollars efficiently, and we have to be better at making the business case. Like, this is something that I've had to experience in my career, you know, having CEOs and CFOs sitting down with a head of sustainability, figuring out how to invest in the innovation of that company. And you can get there. Like, you can get to a good business case, which is profitable and, you know, commercially viable, and it's good for people and good for the environment. But we do kind of need to agree on that's the outcome we want to get to.
You're pushing for meritocracy capitalism when really all we do is crony capitalism in this country, right? Mate,
what am I doing
here? It's meritocracy. You're saying, hey, let the actual argument stand on its own. But the National Party's more interested in
ideas, not identities.
If you're a Facebook mate of mine, you've got the money. Teanau, Winston says you are doing this, and when I say this, the threat to burn all his crazy... Thank you. Burning all his crazy mining ideas. He says that this shows how economically moronic and backward you are. We know that New Zealand First watches this show. Your response to Winston, please.
No, we're the Greens. You know, this is protecting the environment is what we do.
Right.
And so being very clear about what our priorities are, particularly in the mining space in this case, is actually just putting people on notice and sort of being very clear with people as well. And I think of the community that I visited out on the Taranaki coast as well, who have been organising for a very, very long time against Trans-Tasman resources, who want to protect the seabed out that way as well, who see that as their place as well and don't want to see extractive industries coming in and plundering their backyard for profit. And also met with people who have been down there trying to protect the Denniston Plateau as well. These are beautiful places. And we shouldn't just let extractive industries come in here, wreck the place for profit and walk out. And this is the party that has been who's been doing whatever they can to support mining companies as well. We're the opposite of that.
Finally tonight, Active managed to get through the Regulatory Standards Bill that will allow corporate interests to have a taxpayer-funded board to vet all laws to ensure they don't impede on their property rights. It's an abomination that flies in the face of the treaty, the Declaration of Independence and the Magna Carta. Qiulae, the people vote for politicians to pass law based on their values and their principles. Why should corporations get the taxpayer-funded power and agency to challenge that process?
Yeah, I mean, I think our submission on this was, at best, it's a bit of a waste of time and ineffective. At worst, it's putting an ideology over, good sense and evidence. Again, it's a really difficult one for us because, we don't want to say we're going to go in and repeal everything, but sometimes
a libertarian wet dream fantasy is not a bloody policy.
And if Seymour is really trying to improve regulation as he says he is, that's something that we're all for.
Hey, of course.
But,
we're all for that. Everyone's for that. But
so let's have a conversation about that. And is this bill solving that problem? We don't think so.
Simon, allowing corporations to judge if a law should pass is like a group of lepers judging a beauty competition. 98% of submitters were against this legislation. How can a fringe libertarian party push through ideological fantasies that impact the democratic process? How?
Because they represent the other 2%. I'm sorry, I thought that would be obvious. But it's true, isn't it?
Yeah.
This is a minor party with a
best government money can buy.
very, very strongly motivated support base. And they play to them. And the tragedy is that the major party lets them do it.
Yeah,
this is not a model for a functional coalition in a liberal democracy.
It's a Stockholm syndrome.
We need to evolve from it.
Teanau, with the passage of this bill, are the Taxpayers Union, New Zealand Initiative, the Atlas Network, Federated Farmers, Groundswell, Fonterra, the banks, and the polluters laughing all the way to Parliament? And should that concern us?
Well, probably laughing all the way to the bank, mate, the way that you put it that way. I think Timothy Paul put it most accurately. This bill is a cockroach, mate. They just won't die. They've been trying to get this on the ballot paper for years.
Yeah.
And finally, because we've got a weak Prime Minister, they've got it through. And you read it. It's got all these principles in there and liberties and so on, and the rule of law, etc., etc. It's a power grab. It's a corporate takeover. You name it. That's what that is. We need to get rid of this bill. It's one of the ones that I would pick to put on the bonfire when we get in next year.
Amen. Quick round. What's ACT's worst idea? A, their regulatory standards bill. B, their treaty principles referendum. C, their school lunches privatisation. Or D, David Seymour's twerking. Qiulae.
I got to go to a treaty principles bill, coming in with a piece of legislation that's predetermined that nobody wanted. What a waste of time and money for all of us.
Simon.
I'm tempted to say all of them. But
all
then
of the above.
Yeah, but I'm also tempted to say the school lunches thing, not because it's as important on the face of it as the treaty principles bill or the regulatory standards. They are both really significant pieces of legislation that will change this country. But the insistence on the absurdly malfunctioning school lunches program demonstrates something about that party's unfitness to be in government, which is not, regulatory standards, treaty principles, at least you can say, we can see what they're trying to do, we can see who they represent and what those political outcomes could be. The school lunches thing, just ridiculous. Only there to make a fuss so they get the headlines.
And Compass replaced mince with organ meat for brain tacos. Why am I eating brain tacos, David? Teanau, what is ACT's worst idea?
Well, in many ways, this is a legislative twerk from David Seymour. So
well done. You win.
He wins.
Those bird school lunches. Come on. Our kids have to eat that.
Right.
Our kids have to eat that. It's terrible. But the RSB and the treaty principles bill, they were frothing at the mouth. It's stuff that no one asked for. No one wanted it. Everyone wants to talk about actually how you're going to keep the lights on, put food on the table, and give your kids a good life. That's what everybody wants. And while you're at it, stop the planet from burning because climate change. But no, this guy brings in the RSB, the treaty principles bill, cuddling up to tobacco companies, mining companies, and here we are. So I would say the philosophical and legislative twerk of the far right, mate, that's got to be the worst, which is all-encompassing and holistic because I'm from the Greens.
Perfect. Comrades, we need to wrap the show with a final word. Simon, your final word this week is, please, sir.
I want to say that I want to talk about rugby. Climate change is like a game of rugby. You have the rules set by the International Rugby Union, and that's the government. The government has to set good rules for a good game. That is their role. You have the powerful interests screaming on the sidelines, demanding that the game be played as a barbaric sport with all the regulations and the limits removed because people have that bloodlust for it, and they are the people who give us all the head knocks and make rugby far more dangerous than it ought to be, and they are the corporates in climate change. And then there's all of us. We're all playing the game, and every little decision we make, where to stand, how hard to tackle, whether to get up again quickly and go on the next one, whether to pass or run or kick, all of those things, they are the decisions we make at home and at work and in our communities, and they all add up to whether the game is played well or badly. That's my metaphor.
Teanau, your final word, please, this week, sir.
My final word, well, I've just come up talking about the Defence Force workforce bill. So power to the workers, mate. It's my words for the day as well. I just take a look around. You know, I asked a question to David Seymour actually about firefighters. I did that 2 weeks in a row. People are just sort of struggling out there. You know, the workers, teachers, nurses. You know, everybody's struggling out there as well. So we've got to give them a vision. You know, that we've got to let people know that actually we've got your back. That lot have got the backs of the corporations, tobacco companies, mining companies, but we got your back. We want to make sure that we can help you out and organise this place, this parliament, and government to make sure that it does the things that we need it to do, which is to help ordinary people pay the rent, get the lights on, and dream a bit for their kids.
Yeah, I think David wants to leave the fire to the free market. I'm not sure how that'll work. Qiulae, your final word this week, please.
I would just like to invite Kiwis to think about the future that they want and they're there for their kids and their grandkids, and look around and see who's painting the vision that most aligns with their values and who is most likely to build that vision in a way that's not going to just get teared down every 3 years by another team. So if we want bold change to keep up with the big challenges that are coming at us, we have to vote for change. So we're excited to get around and talk to people about that.
Looking forward to having you on the show a lot more next year. Thank you, comrades. And now to my final word. Brothers and sisters, I've never really understood this country's authority worship of cops. 90% of my interactions with New Zealand police have been negative, and I have witnessed firsthand their abuse of power, underhanded tactics, and outright corruption. When it comes to the pigs, I'm Jewish and Muslim. Don't get me twisted. First responders, heroes. Firemen, heroes. Ambulance staff, heroes. People who wake up each day saying, I am the law, respect my authority. They need some oversight. I think New Zealand has a cultural hangover from our settler days. The New Zealand police force grew out of the mounted constabulary, a thug force who were ostensibly put together to go bash the bejesus out of drunk Māori at the edge of the settlement. The unspoken deal between white settler New Zealand and the mounted constabulary was, we will turn a blind eye to whatever heavy-handed tactics you want to use as long as you make us feel safe. That mindset of turning a blind eye to police tactics to protect us from our fears of the things that go bump in the night has extended all the way from our settler culture to today. I have been banging on for decades now that the IPCA simply does not have the investigative powers, the resources, or the legislative structure to provide appropriate oversight of the New Zealand police. Criticisms, I might add, that have been responded to as sacrilege and heresy for most of the time I've been making them. Well, after McSkimmings and all that has been revealed there, it seems like most rational people now see the enormous need for an independent guard dog against police corruption. It's not just a few rotten apples. It's a system that allows a few rotten apples to get away with whatever they like. That must change. In solidarity, the revolution continues. Ka pai Aotearoa.